If you've been looking for a new or certified Toyota, come be part of the team. With inventory arriving daily, we'll help you find a vehicle that works for your lifestyle and budget. We'll continue to ensure that your next buying experience is as safe and efficient as possible. Our service center is open with easy online scheduling and a quick, clean process to get you back on the road safely. Head to teamtoyota.net and be safe, be strong, be a team. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Phillies Talk podcast presented by Team Toyota. I'm Corey Seidman, joined by Jim Salisbury, as always. And Jim, the Phils are coming off a winning weekend against the Arizona Diamondbacks, winning all three games Friday, Saturday, and Sunday after dropping the series opener. The deficit in the NL East remains 4.5 games behind the Braves to open the week. And now the Phillies hit the road for two series against, the first two series of this road trip are against inferior teams in the Nationals and Marlins. So they got to keep this train rolling to try to pick up some more ground on the Braves.
Oh, they have no choice but to keep it rolling if they want to continue to hover around this playoff chase and maintain what I would call playoff relevancy. It's going to be tough. They're like 10 games under 500 this season on the road. They don't play real well on the road. On the plus side, they start off with Washington, which is a team that has raised the white flag. Miami, a team that's not in it, but, a team that's given a lot of trouble in recent seasons, especially down the stretch. And then you go to Milwaukee, who is a very good club. So it's going to be a tough trip. You mentioned the homestand. It was a 6-game homestand. It started off terribly with 3 straight losses, 2 to elite team, Tampa Bay Rays. Boy, they're good. Did you see that stat? They went 18-1 against Baltimore this season.
Wow. I guess that shows you what can happen when you beat up on a team in your division that you're supposed to beat up on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that right there, that's your division. So, but I apologize for that tangent. They're a very good team, Tampa Bay. And then, then the Diamondbacks, a very bad team, worst team in the National League, comes in and beats you in the first of a 4-game series. The Phillies scored 7 runs that night. All of them were unearned. The Diamondbacks kicked the ball all over the field. The Phillies still could not win that game. They lose, 8-7. But, they come back and win 3 straight to make it a split on the homestand, 3-3. They had to win those games. Offense clicked. A lot of concerns. I mean, Archie Bradley, who knows where his shoulder is. He pitched yesterday on Sunday, hadn't pitched since Tuesday. He's been a key guy, but he had some issues yesterday with command, high pitch count, didn't throw enough strikes, got hit some. So that's a concern. JT Realmuto, more concerned. He's banged up. Now he's got an ankle. Previously his, right shoulder. It was revealed by Dr. Gene Segura that he's got a sore shoulder. So you make a big investment in him and catcher, but they want to play him at first base down the stretch because they have a hole there with Hoskins, and that would preserve him. And I'm sure just because he's banged up, get him out of such a demanding position for a while. So there's still a lot of question marks, a lot of flaws, a lot of concerns. But, starting pitching has been pretty good. Harper's produced. And they they're in it. They're in it. You can't be enthusiastic about it because it's a 4.5 game spread with 32 to go, because the Braves are just playing so well, because the Braves would have to play like 500 ball and the Phillies would have to play like 10 over the final 32 just to catch them. But it's interesting, and I still find it interesting. And had they cratered the last 3 games of this homestand, they probably would have been cooked. I mean, I still think they're parboiled, but not cooked all the way. So we'll see.
Well, the Phillies have more of like a built-in excuse now if they miss the playoffs because of all these significant injuries that they've dealt with recently. Rhys Hoskins now being out for the season, and looks like the same for Zach Eflin, and now this JT Realmuto, this latest injury. I mean, these are huge blows to the Phillies' playoff chances. It was going to be tough even with these guys, but without them, it's going to be next to impossible.
Yeah, and they didn't build up any type of, first half, surplus of victories, or didn't build any padding in the standings where they could survive these injuries down the stretch. I mean, they're really going to miss Hoskins. I think this 2021 season has really offered a strong glimpse into his value. Yes, he's streaky. Yes, he's going to slump at times, but when he's hot, he produces runs, man. And we've seen it here. They did poke their head into first place early in August with that 8-game winning streak, and they promptly fumbled it away with when their offense just nosedived, and that coincided with losing Hoskins and with Realmuto. It's all coming together now. His shoulder hurts. His production really slipped. McCutcheon's production slipped. His knee hurts. So all of that really hurt the Phillies. So we'll see if they can survive this. I have serious doubts. They haven't put together any consistency at all this season. It's very hard to see them putting together the consistency with the state of their personnel. It's hard to see them putting together that consistency needed to go 10 games over 500 down the stretch here. But who knows?
And you wrote Sunday about how thin the catching situation currently is right now. As JT has this injury and Andrew Knapp's on the COVID IL, is it just pretty much Rafael? If JT can't go for a couple of days, what happens? What could the roster move potentially even be?
Who knows? You mentioned the COVID thing with that's another haymaker thrown at this team. Zach Eflin's probably done for the year now. He's on the COVID list, and then he didn't pitch since mid-July because of the knee. All of that compounded puts him out. Yeah, Luke Williams, the emergency catcher's on the COVID list. So these guys are out at least another 8 or 9 days. Then they have to pass tests. You don't know if they're going to come back right away. Catching situations in rough shape. So Marchand has caught the last 2 days, done a good job. They've won both of those games. But with JT having the bad shoulder, playing for the desire to play him at first base, keep him fresh, and I just think simply because he's banged up. Now, on top of that, he rolled his ankle on Sunday. We don't know what his status is going to be for Monday night in Washington. I mean, it's very conceivable he does not go on the IL, but by the same token, very conceivable he needs a day or two to just get treatment, to just pack that baby in ice, to get the swelling out of there without needing 10 days on the IL. Very conceivable he'd be fine tonight, plays first base, or even goes behind the plate. So we're going to hear later on today what they're willing to tell us. It's a whole new ball game with injuries. They seldom reveal the full magnitude and scope of an injury, and they often go shorter on their bench. So maybe they could do that, but it's very difficult to go short on your bench when one of your catchers is banged up and your emergency catcher is not there. So I don't know what they can do because they have 2 catchers at AAA on the IL, Duran and Cabral. They did in July sign Tyler Heineman, who has big league time with the Marlins and the Giants. In fact, he was the Giants opening day catcher in 2020 when Buster Posey opted out. So he's at AAA. They signed him as a depth piece, and it wouldn't surprise me if a guy like that maybe is en route to Washington as we speak on Monday morning, just to kind of hover around and be ready as a taxi squad, or be ready even to be activated as a backup if Realmuto can't go. It would necessitate a 40-man roster move. I believe I'd have to look where the 40-man is, but they should have some flexibility with those COVID guys. It would necessitate a 26-man roster move. But they're really thin at catcher. So I would imagine Marchand's going to have to carry the bulk here in a playoff race, 22 years old, only made 10 starts behind the plate. It's a lot to ask. And on top of it, they're really thin. Nothing can happen to him. They need to keep him healthy. So, you look at the lineup they're playing. Yesterday they had Bonifacio in center field. He had been recently DFA'd and then called back. And, you look at all over the place. They have reserves and second guys, backups, because they've had so many injuries. So it's in some ways it's amazing they're still in it, but in other ways you just scratch your head. They had the lead on August 8th, and they just fumbled it away when the competition got tougher. They saw the Dodgers, they saw the Reds, they saw Tampa Bay, and they didn't hit. They got outplayed, and dropped into second place, and now we scratch our heads whether they can catch the red hot Braves, who are getting performances from Austin Riley, from Freddie Freeman, and they've had a ton of bang ups. The Braves losing Acuna, losing Ozuna. I mean, they've for other reasons. I mean, they've had a lot of injuries too, but they survived them. They know how to win. They've won 3 straight, and they're moving toward their 4th straight in that division. And I was thinking about this driving home last night from the ballpark. Phillies win those 8 straight. They move into first place by overtaking the Mets. If the Phillies did anything this season, they ruined the Mets season. They absolutely ruined it. They pushed it right out of first place, and now the Mets are the Mets. It's meet the mess. Meet the mess. I mean, can you believe what's happening up there?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. So on Sunday night after the Mets won a game, I think it was their 2nd win in a row, Javier Baez was being interviewed, and I guess he was asked about this thumbs down gesture that a few Mets players had made after getting hits, and he revealed that he, Francisco Lindor, and Kevin Pillar were doing this thumbs down gesture in response to fans, that if the fans are going to boo them when they perform poorly, they're going to boo the fans when they do something well. Obviously, an asinine thing to do or even admit. And then it was so bad that the Mets had to release a statement through Sandy Alderson apologizing for it and saying that it's totally unacceptable for a player to do something like that. I mean, it was just, it was received in New York the way it would have been received in Philly. 100% of fans just saying WTF, especially to 3 players who have struggled the entire time they've been Mets. Baez shorter than the other 2, but all 3 guys hitting in the low 200s.
Yeah, here's what I have to say. Don't release a statement, condemning the actions. Release the player. Release Baez. I mean, that you don't do, and those players need to man up. You want to do thumbs up to the fans, do what you really want to do. Give them a middle finger, because that's what it was. That was a middle finger to the fans. And the fans are actually, this is a business. This is a great game, but it's a big business. And the fans are the lifeblood of this business. And they're the reason that you guys, Lindor, 300+ million, Baez on deck for a huge free agent score. They're the reason that those guys are making those big paychecks. And they have every right to show their frustration. And yes, it stings when you get booed and when you disappoint the fans. But I actually don't think the fans are being personal. I just think they're disappointed that their team is not playing well. And that's the way they show it. Because if you strike out with the bases loaded in the 5th inning and get booed, and in the 7th inning, you come up with the bases loaded and hit a 2-hopper off the wall to clear the bases, you're going to get cheered. So you want to turn those boos around, play better, play harder, play better, do whatever the heck you want. But do not give the fans the middle finger. And that's what that team did. I can only imagine if that happened here. John Middleton his head would pop off. He'd be so angry. And I can only imagine what would happen. Steve Cohen is feeling up there. He must want to go at somebody. And Sandy Alderson, the GM or president of baseball ops, whatever the heck he is, he said he's going to meet with these guys and talk to them. I wonder if they'll come out strong and do something like say, Javier Baez, go home, get healthy, and get ready for free agency. You don't fit in here, because you just don't do that. You just don't do that.
And it's not like he's producing with them anyway. He's only there for another month. I mean, it kind of reminded me, but it was a step farther then, when Sean Rodriguez said what he said a couple years ago here, where he said that the fans were entitled after a win. And then, the next couple of weeks, really, anytime he stepped to the plate, he got booed for saying that. This was even worse, but
way worse. Not even close. Way worse.
Yeah. And Francisco Lindor, I'm pretty surprised that a guy who's, just signed a 13-year deal with that team, or what was it, a 10-year deal, or whatever, double-digit length deal for $341 million, that you would do something like that to potentially alienate the fan base you're going to play in front of for the next decade.
Yeah, it's completely misguided, stupid move. I'm surprised, too. He's always had this reputation of being a guy who just loves to play. He plays with effervescence and electricity. I've seen it. New York fans, Philly fans, Boston fans, they will support you through thick and thin. but they're just going to show disappointment when and it's not like it's been 1 or 2 games. It's been continued poor performance for the team and for those players. And the fans are frustrated. Go to New York sometime, pay those ticket prices, pay those parking prices, pay those concession prices. Same in Philly, big, steep prices. Fans want to see, they want to see wins. They want to see success. They want to see guys play hard. And when they're going to voice their displeasure when those things don't happen, they have every right to voice their displeasure. And like I said, sure it stings, and I'm sure it stings. We all have bad days at our jobs, and none of us want to be ripped for it and booed for it. But none of us have the public jobs that these other guys have because none of us have that talent. It goes with the territory. You got to take the heat. And if you can't take the heat, the old saying, get out of the kitchen. But in this case, if I was running the Mets, I would think about removing the perpetrators from that kitchen and just say, thank you very much. But, if we're, Steve Cohen wants to talk about starting this new culture up there. You want to start a new culture up there. I think you need to excise that problem there and just say, this is not going to be tolerated. Because I bought this team because I love the Mets, but it's also my business. And you're not going to urinate on my customers like that. It would be like, the chef at a great restaurant responding to a poor review by, blowing his nose in all the meals that night and serving them. So, I'm serious. Sorry to be blunt like that, but it just, hearing this stuff last night driving home, and then I came home, I couldn't wait to fire up my computer to read all about it, and it ain't going away. It ain't going away up there.
Well, what I was going to say is that now everything enters damage control mode with the Mets, and I wouldn't be surprised if Francisco Lindor, when he's asked about it, just says like, "Oh, that wasn't my understanding. I thought it was something else." Because Javier Baez is the one who admitted it on behalf of the three of them. And then I saw that Kevin Pillar last night was like defending himself all night on Twitter against people who are coming at him. And so, like, if you're a Lindor, there are ways that you can kind of escape some of this fire if you just kind of change the topic or change what the reasoning was, or say that you didn't fully understand. So I'm just curious what the next step of all this is.
I don't know. I think it's too late for rationalizations and explanations. Baez was pretty clear in what these gestures meant and who it was directed at. I don't think there's any taking that back. And, I think, and I wonder if management needs to make a really strong statement here. I believe they need to. We'll see if they do. I don't know how Baez can even take the field in that ballpark anymore. Do you? Don't you think that's going to be really, really difficult? If boos bother him this much, it's all he's going to get the rest of the way. Yeah. That's a dead team. You want to change the culture. I think you need to make a strong statement and maybe say goodbye to somebody.
My favorite reply that I saw underneath Sandy Alderson's statement is a Mets fan who was just like, "Can we just have DeGrom back?"
Really?
Things have changed.
It all fell apart. It's the Phillies' fault. It all fell apart when DeGrom got hurt, and then, this is the Phillies' crowning achievement of the 2021 season. They ruined the Mets season. They swept them in Philly, dropped them out of first place, and they've never been the same since. And it's just meet the mess. And I'm not saying Mets. I'm saying MESS. Meet the mess. Meet the mess. It just never changes up there. It's back when I was a kid, they used to make fun of the Mets on Saturday Night Live in the early 70s, mid 70s, whatever it was. And it's just one thing after another. I can remember, there was the oh my God, I don't even want to, it was the bleach tossing incident. There's just time after time. You can't make this up with the Mets. And they're entertaining as hell. And, I'm waiting for the next chapter in all this, because I don't think it's over.
Well, the Mets are 7.5 games out in the NL East. They're pretty much buried. The Braves have just created distance between the other two teams. They did what people were waiting for a team in the NL East to do all season, which was, create a gap that you see in the other divisions. And you talked about Freddie Freeman and Austin Riley. They're both having MVP caliber seasons. That's and Ozzie Albies has a zillion extra base hits. So all these guys in the lineup have stepped up to make up for the fact that Acuna's out for the season and they don't have Ozuna the rest of the way, probably. So, if the Phillies had like Bryce Harper, who has had for much of the season an MVP caliber type year, he still hitting right around 300. But if they also had JT Realmuto performing at the level that Austin Riley is, or they had a healthy Rhys Hoskins or Alec Boehm offensively producing like these guys, well, they'd be more in it. But as you said a little bit earlier, the back end of their lineup right now, it doesn't look like the back end of a lineup of a playoff team. I mean, there are a lot of nights that you have like Miller, Torreyes, backup catcher at the bottom, preceding the pitcher, and there's just a lot of outs in that lineup. It's actually surprising that they've scored 7 runs in 4 consecutive games, although some of that is probably because they faced the Arizona Diamondbacks. In this series in Washington, they face Josiah Gray tonight, Patrick Corbin on Tuesday, and Paolo Espino on Wednesday. So it's a chance to continue scoring some runs. But yeah, the difference in the lineups right now, when you look at the middle of the Braves lineup versus the middle of the Phillies lineup, if you looked at the standings and had no idea who was where, you'd probably still be picking the Braves.
Yeah, there's a lot there, Corey. I think this is true in every sport. Teams that have to play their reserve players too much are bad teams. You're a bad team when you have to play your reserve players too often, because they're reserve players for a reason. They're there to support and back up and supplement and be used wisely in short spurts. And when you have to put them out there every day, they get overexposed, and that's that makes you a bad team because you're not playing your top guns. And you're right about the Braves stepping up, and I would add another guy, Freeman and Riley stepping up at the corners in the infield. And I would add another guy to that list, the general manager, Alex Anthopoulos. I mean, he acted quick. I mean, they lost Ozuna, they lost Acuna. He didn't, and they were kind of right there at the trade deadline. Didn't know which way they were going to go. Maybe leading up to the trade deadline, a couple of weeks. He acted quick. He went out and rebuilt that outfield. That sends a message to your clubhouse that, whoa, we got a half season here to go. We're in this thing. We believe in you guys. We believe in our leaders. We've lost some good players, but we believe we can pull out of this. He sent a great message to that clubhouse. The pitching's getting a little bit healthier, and boom, they just absolutely take off. So I would add Anthopoulos to the list of guys who have stepped up in Atlanta. You mentioned some of those pitchers they're facing in Washington. It's got to be, it has to be tee off time for the Phillies. Harper really needs to put these guys on their back and keep carrying them. We mentioned JT hasn't stepped up the way they need him to. He was very, very good, very, very productive during that 8-game winning streak, and then he really started to slip. Had a couple big hits the other night against the Diamondbacks, but I really believe. I mean, the catching position is a tough position. I mean, you're banged up all the time. He's played through a lot this year, and I get the response tweets from people telling him to man up. Come on, man. That kid is tough as nails. That guy is a tough man, a tough player, and he's playing a tough position. Let's go through what his season looked like. Day one of camp, he breaks his thumb, right? Early in the season, he tried to block that ball in St. Louis and took it off the heel of his glove hand, the unexposed heel of his glove hand, 90 whatever it was, with spin on it. So it hits that bone right at the heel of your hand, unexposed, not covered by the glove, deep bone bruise. All of a sudden, it's tough to catch. It's tough to swing. What else has he had? Obviously, the shoulder is bothering him. He's trying to play through it. I would imagine it bothers him hitting, swinging. It's the right shoulder, so there's a lot of extension there, and obviously throwing. And that's they haven't come out and said this, and they've kind of denied it because that's just the way they do things. They don't want to give away strategic advantage to the other team and let a guy's banged up. Oh, my catcher can't throw. I understand, but they've downplayed this shoulder thing. But it's got to be more serious than they're letting on. Otherwise, they wouldn't be putting him at first base so much, or want to put him at first base so much as they've articulated in this plan, and take a step back offensively behind the plate. So, he's banged up. There's something there. Now the ankle. So when you're that banged up, I don't know that you can step up the way you want to. It's just, and then there's another whole avenue to explore on this thing. He's in the first year of a 5-year deal, 115. The shelf life on catchers is it's tricky, man. And if you're this banged up year one into a 4-year deal, it's a concern. It's a real concern. They really, really need to, I've talked about what they need to look at this winter. They really need to upgrade that defense. I don't know how they're going to do it with all these puzzle pieces that can only be moved so much because of contracts and whatnot. But, first base next season, I don't know if it's going to be Hoskins or Bohm because we don't know if it's going to be a DH. But you might have to, the DH might help Realmuto too. A way to get him some rest from catcher. He might have to get some reps at first base next year, in addition to playing him at catcher when you can. But his value is still behind the plate. They need him behind the plate. You're gonna have to figure out a way to get him off his feet, get him rested so he doesn't get worn down and banged up. So you have him the bulk of the time behind the plate. But on top of all these things you need to address this year with the defense, I think you need upgrade in center field. You're going to need 2 bullpen pieces. You're going to need starting pitching depth. I like their top 5. They're in good shape, I think, with five starters. But you're going to need depth there because nobody goes through the season with five guys. You might really need to bring in another backup catcher that can be even a little bit more than a backup catcher, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was
not quite a semi-regular, but a guy who can. You typically think backup catchers about, defense first and just get us through a day behind the plate defensively. You might need to bring in a more well-rounded backup that can help you behind the plate and with the bat a little bit, just because you need to preserve JT because we're seeing signs that he's banged up a lot. You've got 4 years left. I'm sorry to ramble on. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, a large reason why the Phillies had to play Realmuto like every single day, especially coming out of the All-Star break, is because Andrew Knapp's done nothing at the plate. And I know that he's a good guy who handles the pitchers well and knows them well, but he has a .207 on base percentage this season. He's been one of the worst offensive players in baseball, making it out 80% of the time. And that had to be why Joe Girardi was playing Realmuto. There was a stretch coming out of the All-Star break where Realmuto had started 20 out of 23 games. And in one of the other games that he didn't start, he played first base for half the game. So, he was just playing a ton there. And catching is fragile. This is a 5-year deal where he's making over $100 million. And, year one with the Phillies, JT took off in the second half. He was really good in the second half. But then last year down the stretch, the Phillies were without him for a little bit as well. So, this is going to be a concern every year is how much is too much. And is it more important to get Realmuto on the field every day or to preserve like the best attributes that he has? I don't think there's ever going to be a right answer, even when your manager's a former catcher.
Yeah, I agree. And, you could say, oh, we'll just change his position. His value is behind the plate. What is it? The best catcher in baseball, TBIC or IB, whatever.
Which hasn't been true this year, but
no. Who'd you put ahead of him? Salvador Perez.
Yeah.
I like Will Smith out in Los Angeles, the Dodgers. He came out of that same draft as Mickey Moniak, the 16 draft. He would have been a nice one. He's pretty good, and I think he's got a really bright future. But nonetheless, JT is awfully good, and you need him. And you got to figure out a way to keep him fresh because that's where his big value is. Behind the plate, what he brings offensively and defensively.
Well, and talking about the weeks ahead for the Phillies and Braves, you mentioned that the Phils have 3 with the Nationals and then 3 with the Marlins. They then have a challenging 3-game series in Milwaukee against a Brewers team that has just incredible starting pitching. As for the Braves, they're still in a difficult portion of their schedule. They have 3 games here with the Dodgers, and they're going to see the top 3 pitchers currently in the Dodgers staff in Julio Urias, Walker Buehler, and Max Scherzer. So particularly seeing Buehler and Scherzer on back-to-back nights, Tuesday and Wednesday, the Phillies sweep this series, they could pick up 2 games on the Braves and be 2.5 back by the middle of the week. But if they are unable to do that after this Dodgers Braves series ends, then it gets really, really easy for the Braves, who kind of like the Rays earlier that you mentioned, who have beat up on the Orioles. The Braves have been able to just put away those bad teams, score runs early, and end the games. So this is really these next 3 days as important as any days remaining on the Phillies schedule.
Yeah, you mentioned early runs. The Phillies have scored runs in the first inning of the last 2 days and won those ball games. I agree. Early runs are huge, especially when you're playing a bad team. Step on them early and demoralize them early, and then keep adding on. So they got Zach Wheeler tonight. Perfect way for me, in my opinion, to start off a road trip and a series with him on the mound. And he hasn't been the Zach Wheeler of the first maybe 4 months lately, and I think he kind of is maybe a little frustrated after his last outing. So I would look at him to come out and deal tonight. And one of the big, to me, subplots of this series coming up in Washington is, I believe it's Wednesday, which is September 1st, and I believe that's Aaron Nola's day to pitch. And he's had a lot of struggles in the month of September the last couple of years. But I think 4 of his last 6 outings have been pretty good, at least in terms of the stuff he's shown, swing and miss, strikeouts. He does seem to be trending toward, getting better here in an inconsistent season. I've seen better stuff lately. Obviously had that great game out in San Diego. So a little subplot there. They need him to pitch well, and he needs to pitch well, and it's September, and I'm sure he wants to turn the page on that. So that's a little something to watch in this series as well.
Yeah, I don't think Aaron Nola wants to be answering questions again in the month of September and beyond about why he struggles in the season's final month. So,
right. Yeah, he can answer them himself with his performance, right? It's like, you don't want to answer the questions, you control it. You don't want to get booed in New York, you control it. So, but it's a tough game. It's a tough game. I know Nola, he's made some mechanical adjustments. I'm actually going to try to write a little bit about those before his next start. So we'll see what he can do. He's vital. And they've lost Eflin now. I mean, when Girardi says, he's probably out the rest of the season, or it's likely he's out the rest of the season, to me, that means he's out the rest of the season.
Right.
Because Joe so seldomly speaks with any definitive, tone. So for him to come out and say that's likely when Joe doesn't like to even come close to committing to things, that sounds like he might be done.
Yeah, so our first look at the Phillies' potentially full 5-man rotation of Wheeler, Nola, Kyle Gibson, Zach Eflin, and Ranger Suarez looks like it will not come until early in the 2022 season. As for the Phils, they have now these 3 in D.C., 3 in Miami, 3 in Milwaukee. 7:05 p.m. tonight, it is Zach Wheeler and Josiah Gray. And as you mentioned, Aaron Nola closing out that series on Wednesday. So thanks for listening to the Phillies Talk podcast. He's Jim Salisbury. I'm Corey Seidman. Catch you later in the week.